Hey folks, how's it going? This is Mike, or do you know me as Gray followed by a number. Anyway, so I'm here for the weekly chat with James Higgins and a whole bunch of other people who are taking part. And here's my response. So the first question is, okay, I'm half asleep here. It's almost 2:30 in the morning. I need to get to bed, so I'm going to try to do this very quickly. The first topic is pick 3 people from the same movie and that you would like to have dinner with. All right. Well, that's a very easy question, actually. And I'm going to pick a movie that I've talked about many times, and you're probably sick of hearing me talk about it, and that is The Night of the Hunter. And I would like to sit down and have dinner with Charles Laughton, the director of the film, and Robert Mitchum, the star, and Lillian Gish, who is one of the co-stars of the film. And Shelley Winters, who is the leading lady, she can have dinner with somebody else. I would like to sit down with these 3 people and just talk about this wonderful film because I love it so much. Now, Charles Laughton, of course, it's the only film he directed, and it was not a box office hit when it first came out. It disappeared very quickly. So he passed away in 1962, decades before the film began to be seen by new eyes and started to get critical acclaim and winning its audience. And it would have been so wonderful for Charles Laughton to have, been around to get some of that praise for that wonderful piece of art that he made in The Night of the Hunter, and to be able to sit down with all the co-stars of the film who were still very much alive in the 80s and the 90s, and because there were many documentaries and interviews that were done that featured Mitchum and Gish and Winters and a lot of the people who were part of that film. And it would have been so nice if Charles Laughton could have been there to have taken part in some of those things. But yeah, the chance to sit down and have dinner with those folks, that would have been amazing. Charles Laughton is just he was such an intelligent and articulate and literate man. And the very same is true of Lillian Gish, certainly, with her great, just the history, the time that she had been in films ever since the 1910s. She was there for the very beginning of the cinema, really. And all the things that she had experienced and the depth of her knowledge that she could have brought to any kind of discussion of films. And Robert Mitchum, of course, he was also a very intellectual and intelligent man in a much different way. And for the most part, he had kind of a laconic attitude toward being an actor, and he wasn't that enthusiastic about talking about films and film philosophies and all that sort of thing. But he was very much an admirer of Charles Laughton, and one reason why he wanted to do The Night of the Hunter, and one reason why he put so much into his performance, is because of his great admiration and respect for Charles Laughton. And the same is true of Lillian Gish. She has said that she agreed to do the film after not having been in films for several years because she wanted to work with Mr. Laughton. So yeah, to sit down and have dinner with these folks would be an absolute dream fantasy of mine, dream come true. Okay, the second question, James, I hope I'm understanding this correctly. Present an Oscar to anyone, an actor, actress, or director, who would it be and why? Now, I guess you mean anyone that we think deserves something for a film that they directed or that they acted in. And so that's the way I'm understanding it. And the one I'm going to pick is, I don't have it with me. Okay, I'm going to pick the film Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon, 1941. And I think the reason why I'm picking this is because I just saw this movie on the big screen last weekend for the first time. I've seen it many times on DVD and on television, but the first time on the big screen, bigger than life, the way it was intended to be seen. And it was absolutely wonderful. I mean, just like all the movies I've seen in theaters for the first time, it just came to life in a whole new and wonderful way. And God, just so many things about it were fantastic. And I think it was a digital presentation. I don't think it was a film. Which is fine because the digital prints are always just, they're so completely perfect and pristine, I really can't complain. But I noticed so much about Bogart's performance. I think this is the film that made him a major star, right? 1941 is when he became a major star. It was with the Maltese Falcon, playing Sam Spade the detective. And there were so many layers to his performance. It wasn't just playing a hard-nosed detective, a tough guy. He had a lot of, he was filled with passion, he had a sense of honor, he was very cruel, he was very conflicted, and it all showed on his face. and the way he gestured with people, the way he treated women, the way he treated the people around him, and it's just, wow. I noticed so much about Bogart's talent as an actor in this movie by seeing it on the big screen like that. And I want to go back and watch this film again and again and just kind of study it. And yeah, it would have been an honor to see Humphrey Bogart win an Oscar for that. Of course, he won later in, was it 1951 or 1950 for The African Queen, and he was very good in that. That's actually one of my favorite Bogart performances. I like his detective things like The Big Sleep and Dark Passage. Well, he wasn't a detective in Dark Passage. Things like To Have and Have Not, certainly Casablanca. In a Lonely Place, one of the best film noirs ever made. I really am an admirer of Humphrey Bogart, but yeah, I would have liked to see him get an Oscar for The Maltese Falcon. Okay, so, and then continuing on about the Oscars, pick a film that was nominated that should have won. All right, well, I'm going to go all the way back to the year 1944, old Hollywood, right? So that year, the winner of the Best Picture was a film called Going My Way from Paramount Studios. It starred, excuse me, Bing Crosby as a priest called Father O'Malley, who comes to an inner city parish, St. Dominic's in New York City, to help an older priest played by Barry Fitzgerald, Father Fitzgibbon, to save the parish. Right? It's very sentimental. It's very melodramatic. It has a little bit of everything. It has a church that burns down, has to be rebuilt. It has people in the parish who are fighting with each other, and bad kids that the priest turns into a kids choir. It has music. It has an Oscar-winning song called "Swinging on a Star," if you remember that song. Also has a title tune. These are both sung by Bing Crosby, by the way. He does it very well. He also sings Ave Maria. And Ave Maria is also sung by a Metropolitan Opera star who was in this film. Her name is Risa Stevens. She has a beautiful voice. So it has a little bit of everything, but it's just very sentimental. And ironically enough, the film that I'm picking was also nominated that year. It's called Double Indemnity. Okay, classic film noir. Also put out by Paramount Studios, directed by Billy Wilder, and it stars Barbara Stanwyck, Fred MacMurray, and Edward G. Robinson. Very downbeat, hard-hitting story about murder, adultery, betrayal, all those wonderful film noir things that you love. And I guess I can understand why the people of 1944 wanted a film like Going My Way, because after all, it was the war years, and they were probably looking for something that would give them comfort, right? And Double Indemnity did not make anybody feel comfortable. But I have to admit that maybe if I had been voting with the Academy that year, I probably, well, who knows, maybe I would have felt like everybody else in 1944. But this really is a great film, and it should have won. And it didn't. But what the hell. Even though a film does not win an Oscar, it does not take anything away from the quality of it as a film and as a piece of art. It's like putting, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, we put films against each other, actors and directors against each other as winning prizes. It's like putting a painting by Picasso against a painting by, Chagall. It's ridiculous. I don't know. But we all do it, and we all care about this stuff, so it's a little bit silly. All right, that's my answer to that question. And finally, let's see, the final question is to go back in time and attend any film premiere, okay? So you can be part of that first night audience experience and watch people react to a classic film as they would have done in that first night. Okay, so wow, there's so many. James talked about some of the horror films like The Wolfman. What would it have been like to go back in time with what we know about horror films today, when we look upon these wonderful classics like The Wolfman, Frankenstein, and Dracula as not being so scary, but just being a little bit quaint and wonderful and great fun to watch. But what would it have been like to see people who weren't as jaded as we obviously are to react to these marvelous films in that completely fresh and uneducated way? It would have been great. And I would like to see, I mean, not just The Wolfman, but also to go back to, let's say, 1932 and watch people who are watching Boris Karloff as the Mummy for the first time. Remember that one of those early scenes where the mummy is standing still behind these guys who are talking, and all of a sudden he just starts to move his hand. I mean, can you imagine really people jumping out of their chairs when they start seeing that? That's a great scene even today, just to watch on a small TV screen. But to see it on a big screen, I think I'd go nuts. So yeah, that would be great. But the film that I'm going to pick is another one of my favorite film noirs, and it's also an old Hollywood story that I love very much. From the year 1950, this is Sunset Boulevard. And yeah, I think it would be great to sit with an audience watching this marvelous film, because it was not only a great story about the Hollywood fantasy, but it also pissed off a lot of people in the Hollywood industry in 1950, because it dared to take away the veneer of that Hollywood dream image of everything being wonderful and perfect, and people never getting old, and there's no insanity, and there's no you know, bad feelings between people who used to work together and all that sort of thing. And yeah, once again directed by Billy Wilder and also released by Paramount. Gloria Swanson was so incredibly iconic and wonderful in this film, and people to this very day believe that she was playing herself, because after all, she was a former silent film actress who had not made a film in several years, and she was around the age of 50, and she was making a comeback. But it wasn't true of her, because she had actually made a perfectly positive transition from silent to sound in the late 1920s, and made several films into the sound era. But she, you know, like a lot of actresses who were kind of reaching their peak and then declining a little bit, she started to fall out of favor. So she stopped making films in 1934, made another film in 1941, and sort of a one-film comeback. Didn't go over very well, so she had not made a film since 1941, when she made this film in 1950. But she was still working as an actress. She worked on Broadway for years, and also a very successful businesswoman, and very much involved in life. She wasn't one of these people who was sitting around in some Hollywood mansion with the curtains drawn and staring at herself in the mirror. She was very much involved in life. But she was so convincing in this role that everybody believed that she was playing herself. And the film played with Hollywood fantasy, mixing the Hollywood fantasy with reality, because she actually had worked at Paramount Studios where this was made. She worked with Erich von Stroheim, who co-starred with her in the film, and Cecil B. DeMille, the director, had a part in the film, playing himself, and she had worked for him many, many times early in her career. So they knew exactly what they were doing when they put this film together. But I think it would have been wonderful to have sat there and well, just to be outside the theater when someone as iconic as Gloria Swanson would just simply step out of a limo, and her beautiful self at the age of 50, a beautiful woman, and just you know, standing there getting paparazzi and people applauding her and just being her very regal and triumphant self. That would have been fun. And to sit there and see one of those great old movies like that with the first-time audience, and knowing that she was in the theater, that would have been exciting. I can think of a lot of old films. It would have been great to have seen All About Eve at a premiere the very same year, to know that the actors and the director are sitting there in the studio to see that for the first time. There are so many. I can just imagine what it would be like to go back and see those old films for the very first time with first-time audiences. So, okay, I've done enough here, and so I guess that's it. It's time for me to go to bed. And I've enjoyed this week's chat, and I hope that if any of you like this, you leave a comment. So thanks a lot.